Good evening and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to Amsterdam Talk Season 3, Episode 14. Tonight, we're coming all the way from Wisconsin with my guest, Miss Dana Miranda. How are you doing tonight, Miss Dana Miranda?
Hey, Rod, I'm great.
All right, so Dana is a certified educator in personal finances, and we chose to do the show tonight because it's around tax season. So a lump sum of money is going to be going out. So basically, Dana's going to help us, I guess, in the words of 50 Cent, get rich or die trying. Uh, we're going to go that way. Before we get started,
All
Dana,
right.
tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I am, uh, like you said, a certified educator in personal finance. I'm a financial educator. My background is as a writer. That's where I started. And so I started learning about personal finance through working in personal finance media, writing for a bunch of different personal finance blogs and sharing financial advice and learning as I was doing that.
Mhm.
And last year or 2021, I launched Healthy Rich, my own personal finance site to share a different perspective in the space and share some stories from people whose voices we don't hear often in the personal finance space.
Okay, some of those you contribute writing to Forbes, Business
Mm-hmm.
Insider, New York Times. How was
Yeah.
that like?
It's kind of an interesting thing as a freelance writer to get into those bigger publications because it kind of builds up over time. It's sort of like when you reach any milestone that you
Mhm.
thought was impossible at one point. When you get there, it suddenly feels like when you kind of, once I became good enough to get into those publications, it didn't feel like such a huge mountain to climb because I had been writing for 10 years. I'd been developing my expertise in personal finance for like 5 years at that point. And so, what 10 years ago would have seemed like a really kind of tricky publication to get into um, just felt like the next step kind of at that point in my career. But yeah, it kind of feels just like any other freelance job. I've written for blogs that are run by a single person, and I've written just one thing for the New York Times, and I contribute regularly to Forbes and Business Insider. And they all feel pretty similar, except that sometimes more people read some of the
Okay.
bigger publications.
So was like any awards for any of these publications that you submitted in?
Nothing for anything that I've written so far.
Okay.
So
So I guess
fingers
okay.
crossed. We'll see.
So well, you'll get that. So I guess since
Yeah.
we jump right into it, then. So what is this? What is this budget? Explain the budget culture to us.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the name I came up with to kind of identify the dominant paradigm in personal finance, in media and education. It's the way that we talk about money, the way we teach money. And I chose the name budget culture because it's kind of a parallel to what I see in diet culture. If
Hmm.
you're familiar with that, in just the way that we talk about food and bodies and health and wellness and exercise, and that in both instances, there's this real focus on discipline and restriction and individual responsibility, and kind of ignoring all of our kind of individual needs and the nuances of what's going on in our lives and in the space. So, budget culture really ignores the lifestyles and histories and identities that we bring to our experiences with money,
Hmm.
and just offers up just sort of one set of rules for how to make as much money as possible and hold on to it without considering like what our individual goals might be, and what our individual
Oh, she went out. I don't know what's going on because I can't seem to hear you.
I can still hear you.
Okay, okay, yeah, we're good now. Okay, we're good
Okay,
now.
great.
All right. So I heard the last part where you said,
Hmm.
starting up for for your budget goals. It's kind of
Hmm.
like, the diet. So you want to have a goal. So for someone who just wanna uh I guess start a goal from heal financially, as you stated. You want to heal
Mhm.
financially. What would be the first thing that they can do?
So I always start with thinking about your relationship with money. A lot of people kind of pick goals that are like handed to us, like you have to pay down debt or you have to make as much money as possible, you have to take on a side hustle. But I think start with understanding your own relationship with money. So think about the things that maybe you heard from your parents growing up, the experiences that you had with your family and in your community, that kind of affect the way that you think about money. So the way that you think about um, your relationship with work and your responsibilities around work, the way that you think about using public resources and community resources, the way that you think about debt. Um, Try to kind of get oriented to all of that, and sort of think about your. A lot of people call it a money mindset. It's sort of that idea. Like, what
Hmm.
do you think about money? What is it? What does like being rich mean to you, or what does having money mean to you? And what? How do you treat kind of managing money and making money and those kinds of things? Um, so start there so you can understand like what sort of the beliefs that you have around money and how those are driving the actions that you're taking. So if you have a belief that being rich is evil and that people who have a lot of money are like necessarily got that way
Hmm.
through some kind of bad actions, then you might be um, inclined to like avoid going down that path, and you might be inadvertently kind of setting yourself up with this like a scarcity mindset or a poverty mindset, and turning down opportunities or limiting yourself in some way. So understanding where that mindset is coming from can help you understand the kind of the next steps that you need to take, and it can also help you set your own goals for your situation instead of just kind of taking what you think you should be going after. So maybe about and it looks like an amazing goal, but what you realize actually is that right now what you want to do is like have time to spend with your family or on hobbies or something. And so working a lot and saving a bunch of money and being super frugal doesn't help you achieve that goal. So starting with kind of understanding what your relationship is can help you make all those kinds of decisions for yourself.
Okay, so you find out what your relationship is with money,
Mhm.
and you find out it's a horrible relationship. It's horrible. You just cheat on it all the time. So would somebody align themselves with you to say, okay, I need to have a better monogamous relationship with this money
Mhm.
instead of just living willy-nilly and just spending everything. So they would come to you and you would be able to set them on track. How would you do that?
Mhm. Well, I don't work with people one on one. I focus more on education, so offering information about sort of how our financial systems work.
Mhm.
So I spent a lot of time working in personal finance media, and a lot of the like education that we offered was kind of doling out those rules that I talked about under budget culture. So saying like this is the right way to save, or this is the right credit score to have, and all these kinds of things. But I focus more now on educating people about how our basic financial systems work. So what does it mean actually to invest? Like how does your 401k work? Um, how does a credit score work? What factors go into that? And how does your behavior affect those factors? What are the consequences of having different kinds of debt? And what are your options when you have those kinds of debt? You talked about tax season. I'm not a tax expert, but I do like to dig into that a little bit just to give people information that can sort of reduce that stress. So I like to start there with focusing on helping to sort of demystify these big systems and help people understand how they work so that we can make decisions from a more empowered place. Because if you don't know the consequences of your actions within these systems, and if you don't know how these like various systems are discriminating against people for different reasons, then you don't know how to navigate them and how to be successful within them or in spite of the ways that they're designed.
Okay, so now you stated investing. So basically, that's
Mm-hmm.
basically making your money work for you. How
Mm-hmm.
would you start someone off of that who has no idea? What would you
Um,
say at a seminar? Since you don't do one-on-one, I guess it would be at a
yeah.
seminar or something in that, or
Mm-hmm.
publication. How would you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always recommend, and again, not individually, but just kind of as a general um, rule, people, almost no one should be investing in individual stocks, like picking individual stocks, which is if you're using like investing apps like Robinhood and those kinds of things that sort of claim to democratize investing,
Mm,
it can be really tempting to play around with those. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it, putting like a little bit of money into that. But as far as like a wealth building strategy, most experts recommend against that kind of strategy because it's been shown over and over again that individual investors and even like stockbrokers, like professional investors,
mhm.
can't beat the market as a whole by picking individual stocks most of the time. They'll either underperform the market or perform about the same. And so you're best off putting money into what's called an index fund, which is a basket of funds. It's a type of mutual fund, which is a basket of, sorry, stocks, not funds, that just has equities from a variety of companies. And so what that lets you do if you put your money into that is it follows the performance of sort of an index as a whole, which is a good representation of the stock market as a whole. So it spreads your investment across all of that and doesn't count on you to make specific picks and make a guess about like how Apple's going to perform over the next few years and that kind of thing. So that's a good place for anyone to start if you're putting money into an investment account. If you don't already have a retirement account, that's actually usually where most people start, is to either put money in an IRA if you don't have access to a workplace retirement account. If you do have access to a 401k at work, or some workplaces have a 403b, talk to whoever is your representative for that, somebody in HR, and figure out to make sure that you're putting your money in there. That tends to be kind of the simplest way for most people to get started. And it's a pretty tends to be a pretty safe way of investing for the long term as well.
Well, you said about underthrow the market, or
Mm-hmm.
so I don't want to say overthrow or pirate it. Something that happened last year with the whole
Mm-hmm.
read that GameStop thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, is that a way? I'm guessing because it was whatever they did, they just GameStop shot up from like $17 a share to almost, I think it was like 100 and something within like a couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
So, would you call that like somebody just saying, "Okay, we're going to try to get rich. We're going to overthrow the stock market"? They just did it.
It looked like a few people getting pretty lucky by kind of playing the market, something like that. So that it's definitely an anomaly. That's why it made headlines. And it's exciting to see. And some people, really made out well. And we see that in headlines around cryptocurrency too, not
Hmm.
lately because the numbers aren't quite going up the way they were for a couple of years.
Hmm.
But there are some instances where people get lucky. Someone figures out one thing, and if you get in at just the right time, it kind of works out in the short term. For a lot of people, that kind of thing doesn't work out in the short term because you don't get the timing just right. And
Right.
that's what's pretty tricky, and why most experts recommend sticking with what is a lot more boring kind of investment, an index fund, because um, because it's a lot more stable, and there's historically kind of shows a lot better chance of long term having those better returns. I think of individual stock picks, like whether it's something like that through GameStop, or even through Robinhood or cryptocurrency investing, I think of that a little bit more along the lines of playing the lottery, especially if you're not an experienced investor, that it can be fun to do. And so if you've got money that you're willing to lose, that you want to throw in, then go ahead and kind of gamble it on those. It can be a fun thing. And so, like, if it's something that's entertaining for you, go ahead and do it. But it can be really risky. And I don't know with the situation with the GameStop thing, because that was one particular stock, but something like investing apps also can be costly just in fees and things like that, because you're usually investing a pretty small amount of money compared to the amount that you're paying in fees.
Okay. Well, no, because that was rather actual, intriguing last year,
Mm-hmm.
just how the stock just rose in a matter of hours.
Yeah.
Like you said, you said they could have got lucky, but it looked like there was more planned than anything. They said, we're just going to go ahead and just do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it just rose all the way up. So, like you said, it's just like playing the lottery. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I guess you can't play if you can't. I mean, if you don't play, you can't win.
Right.
So
If you don't play, you can't lose either.
right. So you would say the more safer bet if you're going to do it,
Mm-hmm.
as far as just like you said the IRA, your
Mm-hmm.
401k, and was
Mm-hmm.
403b.
Yeah, which is like a 401k, but for usually nonprofits and I think sometimes teachers. It's just a different kind of investment account, retirement account. Yeah. I think those
Okay,
two things
so
just kind of have like different purposes. So for long-term wealth building, experts generally recommend that safer, kind of more stable strategy.
mhm,
If your purpose is that you have kind of a bucket of money that you are willing and able to lose if things don't go right, and you like sort of the risk or the thrill or whatever, then that sort of um, then that's just sort of a different purpose. I just wouldn't think of it as your sort of like long-term financial strategy.
okay. All right, so now we're gonna go to that. We got viewers watching, and which most of us went to college. So I know we're gonna talk about some debt now.
All right. Yeah.
Most of us went to college, so there's some type of debt in there. So how do
Mm-hmm.
you like manage your debt and deal with debt?
So I kind of love to talk about it because there's so many like strategies out there for the right way to pay off debt, and there's a lot of people debating the right ways to pay off debt, the most efficient ways. And I kind of like to step outside of that conversation entirely and start with whether or not your goal is to actually pay off debt as fast as possible.
Hmm.
Especially when we're talking about student loans, if you have federal student loans. So the that's the situation I'm in. My student debt is all federal student loans. I don't have any private loans that I took out for school. And that's a pretty safe um, kind of debt to have because it comes with so many options essentially to not pay it. And so my goal with student debt is to just keep the burden, like the monthly burden, as low as possible so that I
Right.
can live my life and have the experiences that I want. And and so I use the options available to me. So I have an income based repayment plan, which reduces the amount that I have to pay. Of course, for the last 2 years, federal, 3 years at this point, federal student loans payments have just been on pause and not accruing interest. So I haven't made any payments in that time. But before that, depending on my income, I had payments between $0 and $300, depending on what I was making. So it offers a lot of relief. And student loans then also come with the option for forgiveness and cancellation in various situations that you can't get with private loans. So if that's the kind of debt that you have, I think the question then is the same thing I was talking about before, which is like understand your relationship to that and your relationship to money in general and your goals, short and long term goals, to kind of understand, is paying off that debt as fast as possible your top goal and why. For some people, it is. Some people just don't like to have debt lingering out there. They don't like the idea of owing money. If it's something like credit card debt or debt that's gone into collections, then you might be dealing with the stress of like having calls from debt collectors, and that might be something that you want to stop. So there are, everybody's situation is different, and I wouldn't tell anyone, one right way or another. That's not paying the debt is sort of what works for me. But I think start with understanding what your goals are and then figuring out how to make that work within the systems. And again, that's understanding like what are the consequences of having that debt and what are your options. So you really have to understand how those things work.
So what are normally your options when you have that? I mean, just any type of
Mm-hmm.
debt. I mean, we just won't talk student. We could just talk credit
Mm-hmm.
card. Like, what are your options?
Yeah. It's different depending on the different debt products you have. So like federal student loans are, like I said, one of the safest kinds of debt you can have. It has sort of all of those relief options. Credit cards are very different, and personal loans kind of in the same way. That's debt you borrow from a private company. They don't offer as many relief options. They're going to look for ways to get that money back.
Hmm.
But credit cards in particular, they require like a minimum monthly payment on your balance. So they're
Hmm.
not looking for you to pay your full balance every month. The minimum monthly payment will be like 1 or 2% of whatever you owe. So it might be something like $20.
Hmm.
You couldn't pay that and stay in good standing. You'll just accrue interest over time. So that debt will continue to grow the full balance, and you would just be paying it off over a long time. Um, but you can also consolidate debt. So if you have like multiple credit cards, or if you have multiple personal loans, or you have some mix of different private debt, you could take out one big, essentially it's a personal loan
Is
to
that good?
consolidate that.
Is that good?
It can be. It's so if your goal is to, it can, I guess, actually help you achieve a couple of different things. So what it does is it pays off those lenders, and then it just gives you one payment every month. So you essentially just take out new debt that's easier to manage. So you don't owe multiple payments every month. You're not dealing with multiple lenders and multiple interest rates and all that. So there's a possibility of getting a lower interest rate when you consolidate, which can lower your monthly payment. So the burden that you have each month would be less. You could potentially get a longer time to pay back the debt. So then
Hmm.
your monthly payment might be lower too. So it might cost you more in the long term with interest, but it would be easier for you to manage month to month. And then in some cases, if you're lowering that interest rate, the amount that the debt costs you is lower. And so you could pay it off faster. So doing that can help you achieve a lot of different types of goals. The one that I really like is that it just reduces the stress of it because you're only managing that one payment.
Okay, so it's reducing the stress of having multiple
Mm-hmm.
payments.
Yeah.
Okay, so damn, I had a question in my head. I had a good one. I had a good one. Okay, so with the debt. Okay, so with
Mm-hmm.
since now we're in 2023, which I noticed I don't know preferably when it started, but I'm guessing 2021, 2022, we have these new companies as far as like Affirm and Afterpay and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, Shop. But basically,
Mm-hmm.
I guess they were the forms of reducing layaway from out of stores.
Mm-hmm.
Now, would you and it's sort of look like it's on the lines of actual credit cards because you're paying something once a month or every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, however it goes. For a person that I guess I would say a person that's having setting financial goals, but you want to have something, would that be a way that you
Mm-hmm.
should go using those options?
That's a great question. I haven't used them myself, so I actually don't know the details of the products other than I know that it's a buy now, pay later, and you pay for something in installments over time. And so in that way, it's kind of like using a credit card. I don't know what the cost of that is. Do you know actually? Have you used one of these products? Is
Well,
there like
nah,
an interest or a fee to use it?
no. Some of the ones I haven't
Hmm.
used it, but some of the ones that I've actually read on it,
Hmm.
there's no interest. It's basically just
Yeah.
saying, hey, we'll give you the product and we're going to take the money out your bank account every two
Yeah.
weeks
That's what I
um
thought. Okay. So I
Now,
wonder if the companies are making money off of data or something, then if they're not actually charging you. But yeah, that's it. They're becoming really popular because they allow you to make those kinds of purchases uh, without accruing interest or having credit card debt.
mhm.
I don't know the impact on your credit score. So now your question is actually making me very curious, and I'm going to look into it. I'm going to write that down right after we get off this call to look into it a little more because I think it's they're very interesting products. And so it's something just it's essentially a debt, regardless of how it impacts your credit score, or, you know, your, if it accrues interest or how you repay it or anything,
Hmm.
that it's the decision that you make to use it. I would say approach that like you do any debt, which is understand how the product works and understand the consequences of taking that out. So if they're going to automatically deduct money from your bank account every 2 weeks, then you have to understand that certain amount of money is going to be taken out, and so you have to know how that impacts your cash flow for the next, you know, few weeks or months or however long it takes you to pay back.
Well,
And
because that's what
so
I was going to say.
yeah.
Because I don't mean to cut you off, but that's what I was going to say is for a
Hmm.
person that uses that, and you just go happy and you just start using it, and
Yeah.
it's just coming out $30 here, $30 on this Tuesday, $15 on this Friday,
Hmm.
$20 on this Monday. Like, you can't control it because it's all coming out at one time. It's just coming out on different days.
Yeah. That so not being able to sort of look ahead and see that and prepare for it could be really challenging. And unlike a credit card, that's all those payments are happening at different times. I would also look into whether those services report to credit bureaus,
Hmm.
because if you're going to be borrowing money, it's in your best interest to be doing that from product or an organization, a financial institution that is going to report your activity to credit bureaus, because that can help your credit score. So using a credit card, if you're keeping up with payments and able to pay it off, can help improve your credit score, because that's what lenders and credit card companies want to see, is that you're using those products. So if you don't have a credit score and you're using something like Afterpay in place of it, then you're losing that benefit. But again, there's all kinds of factors to weigh, so it's just a matter of like understanding how each of these products work, so you know what your options are. Because maybe something like Afterpay feels safer for you because you know those payments are being made automatically, and because you know you're not getting something like a $2,000 or $5,000 $10,000 credit limit that you could
Hmm.
just run up and not be able to pay off. So you just have to know yourself and your goals and your needs to decide which of those products make sense for you.
Well, I mean, if just me taking a random guess, I would figure more people would be consensus to using that than actual credit card because of the
Mm-hmm.
actual interest rates. There's no interest rate
Right.
as far as as I know.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, hey, every 2 weeks we're going to take this money, which is kind of like the downfall, because in the credit card you're going to say I could just pay it each month. But as you stated, that fraction of that whatever you paid, that $20, but you're still doing the interest rate. And I'll tell you one
Mm-hmm.
of the worst financial moves I ever made in my life right now. So this was probably when a Nintendo Switch had just came out, and I couldn't find it anywhere, and I wanted
Mm-hmm.
one so bad. So I went to Finger Hut and got one. So are you familiar with Finger Hut?
I'm not.
Finger Hut is a place where where you buy things not at retail price.
Mm-hmm.
So, the retail price of the Nintendo Switch at that time was $3.99, and Fingerhut lets you do these pay as you go programs. So I wind up,
Okay.
after interest rates and all of the other stuff, I wind up paying $530 for this thing, just
Mm-hmm.
because I had to have it. So it was a place that said,
Yeah.
hey, we can let you do these monthly payments, but it's going to be like 17% interest rate for you to get it from
Mm-hmm.
us. So instead of just
Mm-hmm.
paying actual retail value and waiting for it to come back out, I could have actually just waited, but I didn't. I just had to have it, so I just had to double pay for it. So that was one of the things.
And that if someone is willing to sell it for, did you say 3.99?
Yes.
Was the like retail price? If someone's willing to sell it at that price, then you're a sucker if you pay anything higher than that. But for you, it sounds like the the value of having the product at that time was worth the extra money that you paid, because you are pretty aware of the amount that you paid for it, right? So I can't
100%,
say
yeah.
whether or not that makes sense for you, because you're looking back in retrospect and maybe not happy with that decision. But a big part of my message is to help people sort of feel better about those kinds of decisions, because your only goal in life is not just to optimize every financial move you make. And there are a lot of reasons that you might make a less optimized move with your money, so that you can have positive experiences and enjoyment in other areas of your life.
Right. No, I don't put any extra value meals on my credit card. No, no. What I've done now, I actually took one of those rewards cards out probably maybe about 3, 4 years, and then I just pay all my utilities and all my bills on it just to rack up points to go fly
Yep.
places and get
Hmm.
rewards as far as like for gas, hotels. I said flights, things of that nature, which nobody ever told me. I wish I'd known about this 15 years ago, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just wind up just doing that now. So,
Yeah. That's great. That's what it's, that's the benefit that you can have when you understand the systems and how the products work too. So if you can take out a credit card and enjoy the benefit of the rewards, without paying any of the interest, because you pay off those balances every month, then you're really winning on the credit card companies, because their favorite customer is someone who carries a little bit of a balance so that they pay interest, and they can make more money off of you that way. If you're not paying any interest, they're just making a little bit of money off of fees when you use your card, and they're giving you rewards. So you're really getting a benefit there. So you're kind of beating the system a little bit.
well, I try to, but
Yeah.
sometimes I don't even use the card, but I might say, okay, I got to use it because if you don't use it, then they'll lower your limit if you're not
Hmm.
using it.
Hmm.
So I'll just go to the gas station and just get some gas and just
Yep.
pay that whatever my gas bill is for that day and just pay it right back off.
Yep.
So, what I was going to say, so okay, so now you got a new person that's get ready that needs credit. What
Hmm.
is the secure card the most safest card to build credit, or would you just go to another lender to get a
Hmm.
card?
I love the secured credit card. That's how I rebuilt my credit after um, having a really low credit score from having, building credit card debt and not paying it off when I was younger. I got a secured credit card that used a $200 deposit. It gave me a $200 limit.
Mhm.
And so I was able to use it a little bit. And that was then reported on my credit report. And so I was able to build my score that way. And then after a certain amount of time, they also raised my credit limit too, without any more of a deposit. So showing that I could use that. They raised my credit limit. And that's happened a couple of times because I've shown that I can use the card and pay it off, and have continued to be able to do that. So that was the easiest way for me to do it. But I had to have that $200 deposit to be able to give at the
Mhm.
time. And so I was able to do that because I had a full-time job and a steady income. In 5 years before that, when I didn't have good credit, when I had built up the credit card debt that I hadn't been able to pay off, that hurt my credit score, I didn't have the $200 that I could put into a deposit like that. So it's a great product and a simple way to build credit if you have that money to put into the deposit. There are a few other products that are coming out now too. They're like credit builder loans, a couple of bank accounts. I know online bank
Mhm.
accounts, or sorry, not Chase, Chime and Varo are online only bank accounts that each have a credit builder option. So they offer a credit card that basically acts like a debit card. So you put money in the credit builder account and you use that card. So it can be a really small amount, like $20. So you don't have to come up with a lot of money to get started. And you also don't face like a big limit. So you can just spend basically exactly the way you're talking, where you would just go out and maybe buy gas for the day. So you can start to have some credit activity so that they will report that, and you could show some positive credit activity to either build your credit score from scratch or rebuild it, if it's if you have a low score.
So we talked about having a low score. Say you
Hmm.
don't have any credit. You're just 18. You know, when
Yeah.
you're 18, and we all been through this. You're 18. You're walking through the mall. You can get this. You can get this. You can get this. One of my
Hmm.
first mistakes was I took a card and I just maxed it out within 2 hours, and I bought a cell phone. But it's a person now that's 18. Like without the secure card, what type of card would you tell them to actually get,
Hmm.
or
Well,
advise them to
thankfully,
get? What type of credit card?
yeah. Thankfully, for someone who's 18 now, there are a lot more protections under various acts that happened since the Great Recession. There's some limits on how credit card companies can advertise like that. I know that they can't advertise and let you sign up for a credit card directly on a college campus. I don't see them. I haven't been to a mall in a while, I guess, but I don't see them around like malls and retail stores in the same way that they were um, when I was younger, the way that I would see it on TV when I was younger. Um, so hopefully you won't be faced with like that kind
No,
of decision.
no.
Instead, we can all just take out student loans at 18 and it's a much higher debt. Um, so that's a different kind of debt that we still have to work out. But I I think that a secured card, so building debt from zero, from having, or sorry, building credit from zero, from having no credit score, the process is pretty similar to building it if you have a low credit score. So you could use the secured credit cards, you can use the credit builder products. Another simple way, if you have um, parents or someone else in your family or a family friend or something, if you can become an authorized user on their credit card, or you can take out maybe a small loan together. A credit card tends to be kind of an easier product to take out because you're not committing to a certain amount of money. You only have to pay back what you use, as opposed to if you actually take out like a personal loan, you're taking out all that money and have to pay it back. But if you can become an authorized user and
Mhm.
they're using the credit card and paying it off and not running up a balance, then you also get credit for that activity. So you don't have to have access to the credit card. You can just become an authorized user. So you're not sort of tempted with the balance if you don't need that to spend, but it will still help build a credit report for you.
Oh, what's going on? I don't know if we can be here because it went again. Okay, so I guess we should talk about credit scores and houses. So it's like it, I proved out there's numbers, for. Can you hear me?
You're cutting out for me, so I'm not quite. Oh, you're
Can you
looking
hear
a
me?
little clearer now. Now I can hear you.
Come on, Tennessee. I'm cutting out.
You're clear now.
Hold on, let me. I'm clear now. So I want to
Hmm.
talk about credit scores and houses.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, what is it now that you need? What is the score that you need now for a home?
So that it
What's
can vary from lender to lender. Um, a credit score of about 720 or higher is usually kind of what experts are recommending if you are looking to take out a mortgage. But a lot of lenders will lend to you at about 680 or so or higher. All of that, it just kind of depends on what factors like make up your score, what your income is, all the things that the lender is looking at. So almost no lender will give you like, here is what our minimum credit score is, because every decision that they make, they're going to make on an individual basis. But that general kind of rule of thumb that people look at, what I usually see is around 720. But but you would have to kind of talk to your lender and see what you can learn there. But there are also options for a lower credit score. So like an FHA loan is a government-backed loan, Federal Housing Administration loan. It's secured by the government, but you take it out through a private lender, and those are usually good. I think I want to say it's 580, but I can't remember right now. I haven't looked into those in a little while, but down for credit scores down into the 500s, you could potentially secure a mortgage, and usually at a lower down payment because they're also for lower income people.
Okay, so low payment. So we yes now. So we covered that. You did in the 500s and the 600s and the 700, 720 is basically where they want you to be at, as far as that.
Yeah.
But it's all based on back for your loan career. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and it's kind of, with a mortgage or any
thing,
loan, even if you're, oh, sorry, you're cutting out for me a little bit. So I think we're, even for any loan, for mortgage or any loan or credit card that you take out, if they make it available to you at a lower credit score, you're usually probably going to be looking at a higher interest rate in return. But that is something that can give you access to that product if that's where you are.
Possible. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say possible. I know it's true. I left this one. See if this one. And here we go. Is it better now?
All right, that's a lot clearer. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know what's going on, but I was saying, that was basically you said a lower interest with a lower payment with a higher interest rate.
If you have a lower credit score. So if you're kind of searching like credit cards or loans or mortgages for a low credit score, the lenders that will make that available with a low credit score usually do it in exchange for a higher interest rate. So you're going to end up with usually paying a little higher interest, but it makes the product accessible to you.
So what are you looking at? Like, what would you consider like a high interest? We're going to take a car. What would be a high interest on a car? 4%, 5%, 6, 10, 13?
I took out a car loan, what was it? Maybe 7, 8 years ago. And I had an 11% interest. So it can go pretty high. That's very high. I actually don't know what is average for a car loan. But I know that is high. It's usually in the single digits. But car loans are kind of moving into that like subprime zone that housing was, 10, 15 years ago. And so they're lending to people with a lower income, lower credit scores, but kicking up that interest rate and the length of the loan. So it'll take you longer to pay off and you'll pay more to borrow it. But for me, in my situation, I was very low income when I borrowed that loan and needed a car to work. So it ended up being worth it for me. But I knew what I knew what I was getting into. I knew that was a really high interest rate. Mortgages right now are around 6%, which is relatively high from where they've been, but everyone is kind of getting about the same rate.
Right, because I know the average car payment now is $700
a month.
Yes, regardless if new or used.
Wow, that's really high.
Well,
yeah, but I know that the price of cars is high right now too, so that's kind of the situation we're in, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's this whole inflation thing. It's definitely this whole inflation thing. So anything else you want to tell us before you go? What about this healthyrich.com? I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to get in there.
Oh, that's all right.
.com.
Yeah. So that Healthy Rich is the financial education company that I'm started in 2021, kind of as a content site, launching the financial education arm of it this year to work with organizations and companies that want to help make money better for people. So helping them incorporate teaching personal finance in different ways into their programs. And so if you go to healthyrich.co, that is, you can follow our blog, so you can see stories from contributors that share just kind of their experiences with work and money, to help get different perspectives on these stories. And then I've shared some of my own experiences and insight and advice as an expert too, always just trying to kind of question what I'm seeing in mainstream personal finance media and the budget culture messages that I see in financial education, and kind of question those and offer a different perspective.
Okay, so as far as like everything we spoke about earlier, like do you, because I know a lot of guests that come, I can take these off, I don't need them on anymore. A lot of guests that come on here, they throw like, I guess it'll be different for you because they have type of Facebook groups. Like, do you just do seminars for people? Like you just say, hey, I'm gonna set up on Facebook this week and we're just gonna talk. Do you do that as well?
I don't, because I don't work with individuals. Usually I work with organizations. So the best way to stay in touch, follow my work, is to go to healthyrich.co, which is our Substack newsletter. So you can subscribe there for free, and follow those stories and get the advice that I have there. And if you work with a school or a university or a nonprofit organization that offers some kind of service to community members, I'd love to talk with you about how we might incorporate personal finance education into the work that you do. So that's how I work with communities, is through organizations, so that the end participants can get the financial education for free.
Okay, I didn't hear the last thing because it looked like we got cut off.
Oh, that's all right.
All right. So I can find your publications on healthyrich.com as well.
Yep, healthyrich.co. That's the best place to follow. And then if you're interested in the work that I do with organizations, you'll learn about that through the newsletter too. But yeah, you can sign up to the Substack for free to follow news about the work that we're doing and hear stories from our contributors.
Okay, but this is a personal question, and this is a personal question that's really pertaining to me right now. And I'm not sure if anybody watching is going through this or anybody will hear it. I used to work for a different organization, a different state. So that money that I, occurred right there in that state. It's not accruing anymore because I haven't worked there in a year. So where would I do to move? Where should I move it at?
Yeah. Do you mean money in your retirement account?
Yes, it's not a thing anymore because after a year it stops accruing.
Yeah. So because I don't know all the details and because I'm not a financial advisor, I can't tell you exactly what the right move is for you. But I do know that if you move jobs, regardless of if you move to a different state or you just move jobs within the same state or city or anything, if you move to a different company, there are options to do what's called a 401k rollover. So you can move the money that's in the employer-sponsored retirement account into either a new 401k if you're starting at a new company that offers that, or into an IRA that is just an individual retirement account that lets you keep it and keep the tax advantages of having money in a retirement account, and then also continue to invest it so that it would continue to be invested and potentially accrue returns. Like you said, if it stopped doing that, then you're missing out on that opportunity. And so usually that's pretty simple to do if you have access online to your account with the old 401k. You can just look into the options, like look at their FAQs or contact their customer service and ask about a rollover. That's a really common thing, so they'll know exactly how to do it. A lot of accounts that are managed online, it's just you just click a button to start the process, and they might send you a check or they might just make a direct deposit into the new account. And you just then can have it in the new account and just make sure that it's being invested, that it's not just sitting in a cash account. And then you can start getting the benefits again. But generally it's advised to put it into another retirement account, like another 401k or IRA, because then you keep the tax advantages that come with that. Because you won't pay taxes on like the investment gains in that account, and you won't pay taxes on the money that you're contributing. You get a tax deduction for any money that you put into a retirement account up to a certain amount every year. So there's a benefit to keeping it in there. If you pull it out into cash and use it for some other reason, you can definitely do that, but it'll come with a tax penalty. So you'll be charged a fee in addition to paying taxes on that money as income in the year that you take it out.
Okay. All right. Well, that's sound advice. But I like to say thank you again. But before we go, we have this thing that I normally do at the end of the show. It's called I Be Damn. And, we get bad, hard story dates sent over to us, and we read them off. And, you would be the judge on how would you handle this.
All right.
Even tell me where they were from. So it basically says she went on a date. She went on 2 dates with a guy where the conversation was like getting blood from a stone. But I was lonely and I lived in a small town. Second day he drove and then he drank a lot, seemingly on purpose so he wouldn't be able to drive home. This was before Uber and Lyft, and he begged to share a cab back to mine. I agreed. And he spent the whole night crying in my bed about how I was going to leave him. I broke it off. He then looked up a performance I was in later that year in college and showed up. When the show ended, he waited around to say hi, like friends and family do, and then interrupted me while I greeted people to say, so what's that? So that's what you've been, what the hell? So that's why you've been so busy. And then he stormed out. He drove 35 minutes and sat through a 90-minute play for that. The end.
Oh my goodness. Is there a question? Is there advice seeking in there?
It's just the advice what you would do. Like first
he
went out. She wasn't enjoying company. He drank a lot, so he stayed in the house. On the second date, he cried in her bed, said he was going to leave. And after a year, he shows up at the college, sits through a play just to say, so that's why you've been so busy.
That's challenging. He sounds like a toxic person. It sounds like the person writing in hasn't kept him in their life at all, which is probably a good move. That's probably how I would handle that as well. If he shows up, walk away, which it sounds like they're doing as well. That sounds like the right move. This sounds like a challenging person. I wish the best for him. I hope that he finds what he needs, because it sounds like he is not having an easy time in life either.
Right. So that's our show with Miss Dana Miranda today. She said you can reach healthyrich.co. But if not, if you don't remember it, you could always reach out to me and I can just give you the information. Or I could just send it to her myself and she could do whatever, especially for the non-profit organization. If you work for the school system, she'll be able to help you out. So I know we have a lot of school teachers that watch the show. So remember healthyrich.co. And thank you for joining us all the way from Wisconsin.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks for sharing your evening with me.
I will. Now, tomorrow's a special show tomorrow that we'll be back tomorrow with the Valentine's Day show that didn't happen last week. It'll be tomorrow. So I'm actually going tomorrow. There's going to be a monogamous relationship with a poly relationship. So there's going to be a young lady and her boyfriend, and there's going to be a young man and his 2 girlfriends. And we're going to talk about how they experience love tomorrow at 8:00 tomorrow again. So I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of Amsterdam Talk. Thank you again, Ms. Dana, for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me, Rod.
All right.